Hello, hello. It's Nadine here, and I'm here with this week's episode of Life, Health, and the Universe. And this week I'm joined by Erin Lucero. Welcome, Erin, all the way
Thank you, Nadine.
from
I am from Denver,
Colorado.
Colorado. Yes.
Oh, I had it on the tip of my tongue. So let me do a very quick intro of you, Erin. We've only known each other for a short while, so I've just got a quick intro, and then I'm going to hand over to you, and then we'll get stuck into our conversation. So, Erin, you describe yourself as a big ball of love. That's a nice description. Um, so we're here to chat all about you and the things that you do today. But you've gone from 20 years as an architect, and then, and I love this, you shifted. And I love that you said shifted instead of pivoted, because everyone pivots. You
I know that's
shifted.
not my favorite word.
Me neither. So you shifted to become a yoga instructor, I believe, a shamanic healer. I don't even know how to pronounce that. Is it shamanic? Shamanic?
I think it's a bit like tomato, tomato.
Yeah, okay. Shamanic. I'll just say it
Yeah,
quickly.
perfect.
And you're also an author, but I'm pretty sure there's other things in there that I haven't included. So welcome, and I'm going to hand over to you to fill in those gaps, and then we'll get
Mm.
started.
The gaps. Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's been so much fun meeting you. I'll give a little intro. Nadine and I are doing the Gene Key Pearl Retreat with Richard Rudd right now, and we had a blast meeting each other in one of the breakout rooms, and we're like, oh, we're meant to know each other. Yeah, I'm still an architect. We never stop being what we are. We just shift sometimes. And so, yes, I'm a trained architect, and I was building buildings and making spaces for people. And I had, as is often the case, kind of those big pivotal moments in your life where you're like, am I really living to my highest purpose? And that for me came when my mother passed away 3 years ago, and that created this big shift. And that was one of the shifts that I probably am still going through, because we're always evolving and growing. But yeah, I stepped away from my job as an architect, and I stepped into last year. I really got into writing books. I wrote four, and now I'm pausing in that for a minute, taking a breath, and yeah, feeling into shamanism as a practice, building communities, working on kind of holding space for people, in that creating a loving community and support system for people through shamanism, which we can talk about a little bit more about what that word means, because that's a big umbrella of a word. And yeah, I love yoga. I've done yoga for 16, 17, 18 years, something like that. And I started teaching during COVID as something for my friends when everything disappeared. I'm like, well, let's meet outside. So I started teaching that, and I really enjoy sharing those practices with people. So yeah, I did a pretty big shift into trying to align my inner self with my outer self.
Wow.
And that's where I'm still heading. Yeah.
That's so cool. I didn't realize, because we've only just met, right? So I didn't realize that that shift was actually so it's been quite recent. Like you say, you've written four books. You're like, well, she must have been doing this for a while. And you're like, nah, just knocked them off last year.
Nadine, my life seems to be on the exponential trajectory instead of the linear one. It
That's
just seems,
okay. I reckon that's
yeah.
cool. It's great. I love it. And do you know what? I love that. And I don't know whether maybe it's, I'm assuming we're kind of around the same sort of age bracket. But as we were growing up, or certainly for me, there was a real belief that, you grow up, and what are you going to be when you grow up? For you, it was an architect. I wanted to be an actress, so that one got poo-pooed. Um, but I studied in theatre. You know, I went to school and did all of the things, but there was this mentality that once you've got a job, that's who you are and that's what you do for the rest of your life. But that's really changing. And I love that. I love that for me. I love that for you. I love that for our kids. That it's like, you know what? You don't have to do the same thing for the rest of your life. You can try different things. And I don't know how accepted that is, but it feels like it's definitely changing.
I think it is changing, but yeah, it's slow. It's a little bit like, I mean, if you do make a big shift, you definitely get a lot of strange looks.
Right.
You also get a lot of, wow, I wish I was brave enough to do that.
Yes, yes.
Like the you are so courageous, you're doing something that I could never do. And then you ask them, well, why not?
Yeah.
And that, you know, I think that why not is the thing that really keeps people back from following their dreams. Because you're right, you're absolutely right. We were grown into like, be a vocation, be a job, be a job, because it's like that job becomes you. Your identity. You know, I had a friend once who says, why is it that whenever we meet a person at a party, we say, what do you do? What do you do? Not who are you?
Yeah.
Not what makes your heart sing, but what do you do to make money?
Yeah.
Like that's your whole, you know, that's the whole reason you're on this planet, is to make money, to live some kind of material dream, and then, you know, die. And no.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? But yeah, like you say, it is shifting. Before we get into like some of the things that you've done and that you're currently doing, especially the shamanic, would you say shamanic teaching, healing, like or
so I would say it's so I did a 6-month course in shamanic energy medicine, shamanic energy healing. So yes, I was trained to do energy healing through the shamanic practices from Peru. And we can talk about that more, like what that is.
Yeah.
But I think that on a bigger perspective, when what I feel into shamanism is a big umbrella of any earth-based spiritual practice that, you know, shaman is from Siberia. It's just a word, a Siberian word. But there are lots of different practices all over the world that are more about relating to the earth as our, you know, as our mother, as a connection. And shamanism is about feeling back into that connection with our brothers and sisters, the plants, the animals, the stars, the soil, and feeling into that there is a world beyond that which we can see with our eyes. And so that as a kind of concept, I'm really tuning into and trying to explore, and how we can, not necessarily me go around doing energy healings for people, but how we as a society can start reconnecting with the earth, with each other, with our, you know, neighbors, and how we can kind of come back into that nation. Yeah.
Our connection's a little bit funky, so if I pull a funny face, like I had a little bit of a frozen moment there. It seems it's all right now.
It was on my end, so I can
we'll just keep
adjust
an eye on it
if I need to. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, cool. So I love all of those things. Yeah, it's a massive topic, and it's really easy, isn't it, to kind of be the architect, which almost feels like, you know, the thing that us humans do. We grow up and we go to school and we get a job and all of those things that I said before, and then it shouldn't be a polar opposite, but it almost feels like a polar opposite, to reconnect with all of the thing, like where we came from, essentially. And yeah, I guess we kind of pigeonhole ourselves, don't we, into yeah, into one part of who we are as humans, how we've don't know, you might argue again. We might argue that it's not really evolving what we've done to ourselves. Anyway, yes. So yeah, I love all of that.
Evolution is an interesting word, Nadine,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Like,
definitely. It's like,
that's
yeah,
a word we could contemplate.
yes, I often say to like, I think humans are basically too smart for their own good. Like, we've done all of these things, but you know, often we go 10 years down the track, oh yeah, that was a good idea back then. It's like, because I've come from the health and fitness industry, and you know, it's like we've gone through this whole process of working more, convenience food, sleeping less, like all of these things in order to do the things. And then like 10 years on, we go, oh, that wasn't such a bad idea. Actually, that's causing X, Y, and Z in our health. And really, we should be doing all of the things that we used to do hundreds of years ago.
Yes,
Yeah,
we've
so
overcomplicated our
yeah,
lives
yeah,
so
yes,
much.
yes, yes. I'd love to know, before we get go deeper, what was the what has the response been to you? Did you kind of just like hang up your architect badge,
Hat.
hat, badge,
Yes. Okay, so
and go, I'm going to be
I think
I'm going to be a shamanic healer?
in some ways, yes, I did. I mean, I turned in my resignation and left my job, and I think that the people in my office, you know, my coworkers kind of knew that I was unhappy,
Mm,
that I didn't feel fulfilled in what I was doing. So they were supportive.
mm.
They weren't terribly surprised because, and I explained it to them. It's not that I went, you know, it's not that I went from, let's say, analytical to woo-woo, you know, like, ooh, because I still am the same person.
Yeah.
But I felt, and I think that they could really see it, like, I didn't feel satisfied in what I was doing.
Mm,
I didn't feel that what I was building, and what we were doing in that particular office, and unfortunately, I would say kind of across the industry, because it's so focused on money and not
mm,
humanity, that it wasn't in alignment with like making the world a better place. It wasn't doing what, or at least I wasn't able to affect positive change within my position, and I needed to step back. And that's what I kind of gave, I told them, I'm like, you can say that I'm quitting, you can say I'm doing a sabbatical, I don't really care what label you put it on, but I need to step back and kind of reprioritize myself.
wow.
So that's what I did. Yeah.
Cool. Did you've got are you married? Got a partner?
I am
Husband?
married.
And
Yes.
how did
I'm
that go down with your other half?
married. I think, you know, it was a little bit hard for my husband. He was like, you're doing what? Like, what are we doing with this? And I did have, I had some money in savings to kind of,
Okay.
you know, allow me
Buffer.
financially to do this, but it was definitely a bit of a shock, but he's very supportive, and he's always been supportive. I mean, while he's not into like the whole shaman thing a ton, he still will come out and do fire ceremonies with me, and like he's very intuitive as well, and he can like sense stuff, and so it works pretty good.
Yeah,
But it
great.
was definitely a bit of a oh,
Yeah, because I'm
you're
always curious about that. I
gonna
mean, I know that,
quit
you know,
your job.
it's not necessarily that our partners are unsupportive, but if it can, if you make a radical shift, it can still like I'm still, yeah, I'm just curious to find out like what happens sometimes. um
Well, I changed a lot. I have changed a lot in the last 2 or 3 years. And so it was, we actually went to counseling for 4 or 5 months just to try and figure out how to communicate through those changes. Because it was like what had been stasis for, I mean, we got married in 2006, and what had been, status quo for many, many years. Suddenly it was like, I'm a different person. I'm kind of speaking a different language. I have different priorities. And it was a big shift. And I think it took both of us wanting to commit to trying to find out how to navigate through that for us to get through it. And I think we're still working through it, because I'm still changing and shifting and figuring out, like, where am I going to land, from a, monetary, we kind of have to make money at some point. So how does my passion turn into, something that can support? And so yeah, we're still sorting it out, but that's life. It's that is evolution.
Totally, that is evolution. Yeah, and that's really interesting, actually, because you mentioned money versus humanity. And I mean, I think you're talking about humanity on a grander scale, but like, you're a human, and it's like, what do we actually need as humans? Like, we need, like you said, community, connection, and like, they're the things that probably are, like, when we nut it out, the things that are most important to us. But we focus often on money, while it feels, and it can feel like, well, we don't really have much choice. Right?
Yeah. But I think that there are ways, and I'm still filling into them. And I think that probably in the next, if we check back in about 6 months, I'll probably have like the thing coalesce. But like, there are ways for us to bring money and humanity back together.
Yeah.
Like, there's a story that the patriarchy and capitalism and, this world that we've lived in has torn them apart, because they've told us that we need to disregard humanity and disregard what is good for the earth and disregard all these things, and that the board members rule and, the dollar rules. But I think it's BS. It's just a story. And that, what I learned in shamanism is that we are told stories, and we can either choose to accept them, or we can let them go, and we can, just peel them off of us like a skin and unpeel that story until we start to find our, true essence.
Yeah.
And our true essence says that our prosperity and our humanity can be combined.
Yeah. So 6 months, you're going to have the answers.
I'm working on,
keep me in the loop.
On a project with someone, but it's still very it's in the works, so I can't talk about it on a pod.
That's fair enough. No, we'll get you back on here in 6 months.
We will
with the
get
big
on
reveal.
The big reveal. But I'll tell you, Nadine, like, one of the big things, as kind of talking about this, like, that is, though, I can say that is the basis of what I wrote my book about.
Okay.
Was us finding that harmony and prosperity within ourselves, and to really kind of just get rid of this whole idea of scarcity, and that, like, we can't have abundance, and the poverty mindset, especially when it comes to spirituality. Because I think one of the reasons that a lot of healers or people that are spiritual, like, we have this poverty mindset that is like, you aren't allowed to be prosperous and help other people. I don't know where that came from, but it's like a mindset that is in our society. And that was one of the impetus of this book, was like, that we don't need to have this scarcity poverty mindset around ourselves. And that's what we're learning about in the Gene Keys, right?
Yeah.
Prosperity.
So I've spoken to the listeners about a little bit about the Gene Keys, and it has popped up in a couple of conversations I've had with other guests. So Erin and I are both following a Gene Keys online program called the Pearl Retreat, and it's about prosperity. And yeah, basically shifting our mindsets. A lot of it is shifting our mindsets, or you can't help but shift your mindset um, around prosperity. Like, it isn't actually about money. And when I wrote down, I haven't got it in front of me, but some of the things that I wrote down about prosperity, like when I think about it, like what does it mean for me? Like, money didn't come into it. You know, what are the things that are important in my life were like home, like, and being with my family and community, food, you know, sovereignty was a really important one for me. You know, not having someone else control what we do, you know, what we do. But the prosperity, it was like, what does it feel like? And I just think it feels to me like flow, but not just flow of money, but flow of abundance, like in love, in relationships, in connection, like with nature. Like, that to me is like prospering, because you can see a person with you know, who's wealthy, with, you know, has financial wealth, but if they're not healthy, to me they're not prospering. Yeah,
Yes.
so yeah,
Yeah, and that's shift. That's the paradigm shift that needs to happen, is the idea of why we're here on this planet. Why, what we're here to achieve is to be prosperous. But what does that word mean, really? It means exactly what you're saying. Not how much money you can accumulate, but like how full of health and love and all of those riches. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's a long game as well, isn't it? I've done a little bit of you know, just reading, watching videos, different people that I've sort of follow online and that sort of thing, and obviously the Gene Keys approach as well. What was I going to say? What something that's kind of popped up is like, we're actually, that this idea that we've actually chosen the body that we incarnate into for the human experience that we're having right now. And so, you know, karma comes into that, dharma, you know, being exactly where you are right now to learn the lessons, but that we have chosen this particular experience, and for it to unfold in this particular way, which I think is a really interesting and kind of reassuring concept. What do you feel about that?
I think it is spot on. It's like, and all the you know, having gone into a shamanic path, I do a lot of like meditations and journeys and kind of going into the other realm and sort of feeling into where this moment of my soul is, where that is in terms of its bigger incarnation. I don't know that I want to get into the idea of different incarnations or past lives, because I think that's a whole other topic. It does feel like my soul, like, at least, and I can only speak for my soul, it does feel like my soul chose to be here, and that everyone it has met is there to teach it a lesson that I am here to learn from all of my relationships, and that I am here to do things. And that one of the biggest things that I'm here to learn in life is to try and let go of the fears that I have that prevent me from being me.
Yeah.
And that's we were talking about evolution. I was excited to talk about this. This is the unlearning. This is the, you know, devolving, because you're really trying to come back into your essence, yourself, so that you can express that person that you were meant to be, that you just, because of karma, because of ancestral wounds, because of fears, because of societal conditioning, you don't feel like you can step into it. But there's all these opportunities along the way. There's all these people we meet, you know, like, oh, I meet this amazing person, Nadine, and we have this beautiful conversation, because these are all supposed to happen.
Yes.
And all of these moments are here to help us come into who we are. And I really do believe that. And I feel like that, like, I feel that as a truth, not just as an idea, that like an opinion. It
Yes.
feels right to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And I'm really also like, I don't know what word to use for it, but like being much more aware of when I see those things that bug me. I'm starting to see like how that's me. Like, yeah, like what is that in that person or that situation that bugs me, is like, where do I do that? Or where have I not healed from that? And like that idea of yeah, it reflecting back something that I actually need to focus on, and that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
In fact, it's part of that process of healing and understanding and accepting others and ourselves. But one thing I also along this journey, like, because we often say, you know, that there is often that idea of, you know, these things come into our lives for those reasons, for us to you know, look at ourselves and how we react. But I think we also need to remind ourselves that when we meet other beautiful people, they're also a reflection of who we are. Yeah, so it can be easy to kind of focus on the darker side, or you know, that trying to fix what's broken or what's wrong with me. But it's about like, yeah, seeing the beauty in all of those things. I think I went off on a tangent then.
Yeah, no, it's a perfect, I mean, and that was part of my you know, the teachings that I learned when I was doing my shamanic course, you know, are very tied to Carl Jung and the shadow work. And one of, you know, if you're familiar, which I think everyone at this point probably has heard of Carl Jung and shadows, and but what you're saying is very true. Like everything, that everyone we meet, our whole reality almost is a projection of ourselves, because it's how we see the world around us. It's our lens and it's our shadows. And yes, they're all mirrors. So, you know, if there's something in my husband that annoys me, that's my shadow. If there's something in my husband that I'm you know, really respecting and think is an amazing trait, that's also my shadow. Because like our heroes and our villains are the pieces of us that we maybe haven't figured out that we have within us, because they're triggering us in some way. And I think that's where real healing comes in, is just stepping back and like letting you, yeah, like you said, to give space to both the fact that, yeah, we have some wounds that we'd rather not face, or some, you know, that we all have a little devil inside of us, but we all have an angel inside of us too. Yeah. And that's a pretty powerful, empowering thing to feel into, if we want to think about, you know, empowering us as humans to start to shift how we think about it, like to feel into that, to our amazing traits, to the things that make us wonderful and powerful in a loving way, not powerful in like a dictator way. Yeah.
Cool. I'm just thinking of there was a couple of things there, but I would love to hear more about that shift that you went through. Like you mentioned that you lost your mum 3 years ago, so that must have been an extremely difficult time, and probably still is.
Yeah.
Oh, how do you? Was that when you began to realize that life was worth, like, your purpose Was that that was like the moment? Yeah.
Yeah, that was the big crisis that made me step back and think about, you know, what was I doing with my life? Did I feel that I was doing everything, or was I, and a lot of it was, you know, my mom was very healthy, and then she suddenly, you know, got sick with cancer. So it was like pretty sudden.
Yeah.
And so it was it was shocking in a lot of ways. And then she went in for like the beginning of her treatment. She was having some radiation, and then that led to like this massive artery exploding, and she was in the hospital like almost dying, like right after treatment started.
Wow.
So it was like even more, like it was just like, I mean, just very shocking. And so those kind of things, though, they shake you up. And I mean, we talk about how everything happens for part of your soul plan. Like these things are really important too, even though they're very stressful.
Painful, yeah.
And as I was in my stressful work, where I'm like trying to balance people who need me and they're on my phone all the time, and I'm trying to have Zoom meetings with my coworkers and with these contractors, and my mom is like in hospice, and I'm still somehow supposed to put my work as a higher priority than my mom who's dying. It's like, what is wrong with this world? This is not the world that I want to live in, that any of us should live in. None of us should be living in this world that continues to prioritize like what we perceive as important over what's really important, you know, love and life and family and all the things that you were saying earlier about that feel like prosperity. So yeah, that was the big shift. And I think that's when I decided to go, like I was doing my yoga and deeper meditations, and I just felt that I really needed to go inside and to start learning more about what was inside of me, to figure out how I could realign with what was like the bigger purpose in my life. And so I think that did lead me into shamanism, because it's a very quick and deep way to get to your inner self. Like if you want to really dive in and find out what's on the other side of the veil, go down that road. It'll take you there.
Ooh. It's kind of like tempting but a bit scary at the same time.
It's, you know, I had done yoga for many years, and actually my teacher is Australian, and I went to India with her, and it's a very soft practice. It's very powerful, but it's very soft. It's kind of like water, and the shamanic practices are like fire. So, but if you need big shifts, if you're feeling that the world just is not right, and you want to shed a whole bunch of the past or fears or traumas, it's a very good way to really dive in and to do it.
Wow. It's really interesting, isn't it? Like I was talking about like how you know, opportunities have changed for us, and you don't have to stick with the same thing for the rest of your life. But also there seems to be this big shift towards like healing trauma, and like people are much more aware of these parts of themselves that need healing. And it took me a while to sort of grasp what all that meant, and it's been, you know, part of my process. It's just like, you know, if you understand more and more about what that means, but how that healing is almost like an essential part of then being able to get back to that loving, what did you refer to yourself as being, that big ball of love?
Big ball of love. A big ball of love
yeah.
wrapped in planning skills.
But yeah, like that we need to go through. It's almost like we need to go through it, but it's hard, right? It really, it requires some what would I say, curiosity to start with,
Mm,
and then some determination and some bravery,
yeah, lots of courage.
courage. Yeah, yeah.
Lots of courage.
But it's almost like that is that facing that stuff is almost like an essential part of being able to move to the next step. Although it kind of comes in layers, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it spirals. It's like,
Mm,
or onion layers, or
yeah,
but yes, there's
yeah. So
there's
it's
spirals of
not
it.
like you
Yeah.
can't. It's not like you have to do all of the work in inverted commas before you can feel the feel the love. Let's just say, keep
Yeah.
it simple. Like it does kind of shifts, doesn't it? It's like you get these like little pockets of feedback where things just start to feel better, or you realize, oh, I didn't get triggered by that experience, even though
Mm-hmm.
like you weren't deliberately focusing on that thing. You're like, oh, I'm not as angry anymore.
Yeah.
It's
But
it's an interesting.
what I think one of the gifts, if I can be so bold as to say that I've been given in this whole process of healing people, people have come to me for healing and have come to me with traumas or just feeling bad, just or sad,
Yeah.
or just hurt, just heavy, is you come in, your heart has been closed down
Mm,
because the world just doesn't care, or doesn't, and they come and they're just kind of afraid and kind of scared. And what I do is first make them feel held,
mm,
make them feel that they are held by, not, maybe they didn't have a great mother and father, maybe they did, or maybe it doesn't even matter, but that the world is holding us, that the earth is holding us, that the stars are holding us, the astrology of the planets is holding us, and that we are loved, if you believe in a creator, that the creator is holding us. And then in that love and that support, starting to look at one of your fears or looking at one of your wounds with that kind of lens of love is a little less scary.
mm,
So that's kind of how I try and approach it. And I think it's a much more feminine approach than, like, when I learned shamanism, it was like kind of I did the Four Winds with Dr. Alberto Vioto, who's amazing, but it's a masculine
mm,
approach, even though it is a very feminine, all shamanism is much more feminine, but it is masculine, it is fire. And so I am trying to bring in more of that nurturing, earth and water, and just kind of holding people so that it isn't quite so, kind of like Richard Rudd, he's just very soft.
mm.
And I think that helps people feel that facing their traumas and healing so that they can find love and joy in their life isn't such a daunting task, because it shouldn't have to be.
No. So let's get finally get a little bit deeper into what shamanic healing is, or shamanic medicine, and like what, yeah. So what is it, and then what would one expect to experience when they come for a healing session?
Okay.
Is it talking, or is it ritualistic? Bit of both.
Sure. And I will talk about, so like I was just saying, so I learned the shamanic energy medicine,
Yeah.
as developed by Dr. Alberto Viodo and the Four Winds, which are based on the Peruvian shamans, the Quechua, the Andean people, the Caros of that area. So if you were to ask what a healing from a Native American tribe looks like, it would probably be different.
Okay.
But I think that from a energy healing, that is somewhat universal, right? So this is an energy healing. So it's not entirely unlike Reiki, but Reiki's, let's say, from Japan. So that's a different tradition, different technique. For my healing is person comes in either in person or on the Zoom, because energy healing does work remotely. Like you don't have to be in the same physical space as a person.
Yeah.
You kind of, first of all, it's just intuitive listening. It's that what is, first of all, what is the person struggling with? And then what is behind that thing? And so that's part of, I mean, I think that, you know, shamanism teaches that there's this sort of world beyond what we can see. And so as you begin to feel into that beyond realm, you can start to understand what is beyond what their words are.
Okay.
And then the idea is that let's say our traumas, our wounds, all have little energetic imprints within our body, and especially within the chakra system. And that because our mind and our body and our memories, like we're just this big energetic connected being. So they will go, so let's say you have a big trauma around something that happened in your childhood, and that trauma, you just can't seem to get into a good relationship with a man or a woman, because that keeps repeating itself. It's this repeating pattern story, and it lives in your body now. And so that energy, before you can start shifting your perspective, you just got to clear that energy. So for starters, it's just finding where that energy lives in the chakra system, and then bringing intention into that healing and clearing that system out. And then you clear the negative, the heavy, I don't like to use the word negative, let's say heavy energy, give it to the fire, give it to the earth, let it mulch, and you bring in nice, clean, clear, golden light from the universe and just fill that chakra system. And then your systems start working smoothly. You're lighter, you're a little bit more open. And then if you can start doing your own personal work, you know, as the client on creating new habits and new patterns, then you're kind of cleared and you can have a big shift. So that's the sort of the guts of a shamanic energy healing. But behind it is this acknowledgement that there is spirit working, that there is the ancestors, that there is these sort of higher powers that are working. And when you open up to them, when you open that healing system up, then bigger shifts can happen within your whole trajectory. And that's a little bit harder to explain, but that's where the miracles and the magic really happen, when you're like, okay, well, I came in for this like little thing, but now it's created as cascade, and now my heart is open and I'm full of love and grace has descended on me, and I'm like, wow. Because that can happen. Like those things happen because the world is this beautiful, benevolent place that wants to bring joy and grace and love back into your system that you have been feeling. I'm not saying you, Nadine, I'm like talking about like big you. It's like we've been feeling like we're just this like small, disempowered, sad thing, and the world is like, no, you're amazing, you are beautiful, you are radiant light. And like when that can come back in one of my healing sessions, and like that downloads back into that person and they feel that and they're like, oh, and I'm like, yay.
Oh my God. That sounds amazing. Does it last? Like, do they continue to feel like that, or is there still an ongoing, like?
That depends on the person. That depends on the person.
Because life can like just take over, can't it? Like you can have these amazing experiences, but like if you don't kind of stay connected with them, like little
Yes,
by little, the old habits
that's,
can start
they
to,
can sneak back.
yeah.
That is the truth. Like, we can have these glimpses of our own perfection. And this happened to me, you know, for many, many years during yoga. You have a meditation and you start to experience this. But if you do not make shifts in your life to align with that, you will go back to being that, like what you were before. And yes, so there are people that I have seen that take that into, like, they say, okay, I am going to make changes in my life to align with, like, I am going to get rid of that toxic relationship that isn't serving me. I am going to do these things. And then there are people that are really addicted to their story of suffering, and they aren't ready to make those changes. And I can't control, excuse me, if that person is going to or not, but I can give them the potential and at least show them that it's out there.
Yeah.
And maybe hopefully give people the tools to keep, like you were saying, to keep reconnecting, and to ask spirit and ask the universe to help bring in that prosperity. Because this is what I believe, is that when you shine out as who you are, when you are prosperity, when you are love, when you are joy, those things will reflect back to you. Just like you were saying, when we mirror the people, like, we attract what we are. We don't attract, like, we don't manifest by saying, oh, I want a shiny red car. Oh, and you say that to yourself every morning, and then the shiny red car appears. You manifest it by just being full of whatever it is that you want to be. If you want to be prosperous, you should feel prosperous.
Yeah. And one thing I've noticed recently, like obviously spending more time, and they say that you're the sum of the people that you spend the most time with, right? When you see someone who is living as themselves authentically, in a loving way, because I think that when people, you know, for example, on social media, when someone's bagging someone else out, that's probably not them being authentic. Like there's probably a whole bunch of wounding
Fear.
and stuff and fear that's coming out of their mouth. When you see someone who is embodying these kind of principles in their life, there's nothing about them that you can't like. Even if they say something that you don't necessarily agree with or understand, they don't say it because they want to tell you that that's what you should be, or you know, I don't know, there's just, and you feel like, I mean, Richard Rudd is a perfect example. When he talks to people, he talks to them as another human being. He doesn't talk to them as Richard Rudd, who's written these amazing books and doing all these amazing things in the world. And he's not like up on his pedestal. You can really see that he's like just connected to whoever he's talking to. And yeah, it's I've gone off on another tangent, Erin.
I love tangents. They're beautiful things to go on. Oh, it's so beautiful.
Yeah, I can't remember what I was saying anyway, but anyway.
We were talking about authentic people.
Yes,
and how it just being
and that kind of healing,
yourself.
I guess. Yeah. There's nothing you don't like, because we have that's where I was going with it. We kind of have this fear, or I certainly do personally. What will people think of me if I do this? But when you're doing the things, when you're being who you're being authentically, for want of a better word, you know, we hear a lot of that, be your authentic self business, but like if you're deeply being your authentic self, like without any of that kind of negative self-talk. When you're going from a place of love, people feel it regardless of what you're
Yeah.
saying. It's
Yeah.
not, you're not offensive, you don't hurt, you're not out to hurt anyone or be better than anyone. You're just like living who you
Yeah.
want to be, which I think probably back right at the beginning of our conversation was something that you talked about, right? That you didn't feel in
Yeah.
your role you were being yourself.
Well, I think that what you were saying just really hit on a really nice point. Oh, that's a little bumble over here. Like this idea of like this authentic self that doesn't feel authentic because it's from like a wound, or it's like, I'm afraid to be myself, but I'm gonna go out and like be myself with like kind of gritted teeth, or it's just like, ugh. And I think it's like, that's our ego really
Right.
getting involved in the situation, instead of just our heart, like leading from our heart will just show us the way. And then that's, I tell a lot of people that, like, I'm like, I don't really trust my mind. And they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah, my mind is it's a problem. It's good for doing math and
Yeah.
driving a car. But in terms of being our authentic self, or feeling into what my soul purpose is, or what I should talk to Nadine about in the podcast, no, it won't do me much good. Like, my heart is going to guide me into what feels right. And that's when you said, like, it's about being with love, because you're just radiating who you are, and who we all are, is love and joy and connection.
Yeah. And when you do see those things in others and you think, oh wow, that person's amazing, you kind of, that they're part of who you are as well. So I think that's a really good reminder. But also when we don't feel, if we're worried, we come off the podcast, for example, and we're worried about, did I say the right thing? Oh, I went off on a tangent. The mind, to listen with love as well, and compassion for yourself, that like there's a part of you that's for whatever reason feeling those feelings.
Yeah. And they're valid, and
they're
the
valid.
tangents that we go on are because we were supposed to go on them.
We're in the flow.
Like, that is the flow. The flow just goes where it goes. And every once in a while we have to come back and look at our watch, or say, oh my, how have we been talking for an hour? But that's the beauty of being in the flow. And this is something that as I've released a lot of my conditioning and given myself this opportunity to do a shift and to step back, it's just fundamentally changed how I approach the world. So even like, okay, I need to make some money, I'm going to start doing some architecture again, I'm going to do some stuff, I'm going to do it in a totally different way than I would have 3 years ago. And that's what's important, is that I have shifted into how I look at the world, and how I flow with the world, and how I show up in the world. And so then no matter what we do, whether I do shamanic healing, or write a book, or design a building, it doesn't matter what we do, a podcast, and being an actress, it matters how we do it, how we show up. That's what's important, like that we're showing up in love and light and compassion and kindness. Like, that's it.
Yeah. And as you said, wherever you are right now, you're exactly where you're meant to be. So even if you think it's going to be a certain way and it doesn't turn out the way that, or it leads in a completely different direction, it's like you did this thing to get to that next place. It's a great perspective
Failures
to have. And like you said, it's feels like truth. We have, going back to the time, we have reached an hour, but you've given us so many words of wisdom, and I know that you're well, the magic word in this episode has absolutely been love. But do you have anything that you, just to put you on the spot, really, anything that you would like to close the conversation with? A message to the listeners, like anything? Final thoughts?
Final thoughts. If I could leave one thought with all of your listeners, it would be, take a moment each day to feel into your heart and to feel into love and joy and gratitude for both of those. And if you aren't finding that, if you're lost and are not feeling any of those words, then maybe go sit outside for a minute until you can feel it, because it's everywhere around you. It's in all the breath. It's just about reconnecting with it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Great advice. And maybe get a shamanic healing from you.
Yeah, or check out my book. I'll show it. Can I show you my book?
Yes,
I do
please.
have a copy of it.
How
So
cool.
it's called
Finding love, balance, and harmony for ourselves,
for the world.
Right. And where can we get hold of that? We'll put links in the notes.
You can get it on Amazon.
Great.
Amazon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. We'll put that in the notes.
So.
Yeah, and also if your website, I'll pop in the notes as well.
Yeah. And obviously, yes, if I can ever provide healings for anyone or help in any way, please check out my website.
Sounds amazing.
We can connect and all of the things. So thank you for having me, and I hope we'll talk again.
Yeah, I hope so too. What are we, the room 70 girls?
Yeah. I love it. Thanks so much, Nadine.
Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great rest of your day, evening. Yep,
it's 7:30 p.m. here.
Oh wow. Yeah, my day's just almost lunchtime now.
Perfect.
Thanks, Erin. I really appreciate your time. Bye.
Yes. Bye.